Yes, you can start now, sir, please.
Okay, sir. Good evening to one and all. Shri Mahant Swami Shikshan Prasarak Mandals, Shri Kumarswami College Ausa welcomes all the participants and dignitaries for this national webinar. Today's national webinar is on redefining class participation in the modern classroom. The college has been conducting a series of national and international webinars. And till now, hundreds of webinars have been conducted by the college because of the strong academic leadership and innovative leadership of the principal, Honorable Dr. M.M. Betkar sir. So first of all, as a chairperson of this national webinar, I heartily welcome him on this virtual dais. Today, we are very lucky to have honorable keynote speaker and chief guest of this national webinar, Priya Dabak ma'am, who is educational consultant at Tabula Rasa lab. On behalf of the organizing committee of this webinar series, I heartily welcome her as the resource person on this virtual dais. I also welcome all honorable organizing committee members, Vice Principal SD Misal sir, Ravindra Karanje sir, Praveen Udge sir, IQAC coordinator Dr. Sanjay Kale sir, ढोले मैम, सुधीर गरड सर, अंबादास खिल्लारे सर, पटवारी सर, and Dr. Wadkar sir. Honorable keynote speaker is going to enlighten us on all the aspects of the topic redefining class participation in the modern classroom. But before the beginning of the speech, I would like to invite Dhole ma'am to introduce today's chief guest and resource person. Welcome, Dhole ma'am.
Thank you, sir.
Welcome.
Good evening to one and all. You are welcome to this grand national and international webinar series organized by Shri Kumarswami Mahavidyalaya Ausa. My special thanks goes to respected principal and chief organizer Dr. Betkar MM for giving me an opportunity to introduce a resource person on this virtual platform. Then a big thanks to all the respected organizing committee members, IQAC coordinator and staff members who are supporting like backbone of this series. And many thanks to all the respected participants who are joining very regularly from all over India and abroad, and they are making this series very successful series. So it's my pleasure. I am here to introduce today's resource person. Today's resource person is Priya Dabak ma'am, at Tabula Rasa lab. Title of speech is Redefining Class Participation in the Modern Classroom. Her educational qualification is MA in Linguistics from School of Language Sciences, the English and Foreign Languages University, Hyderabad. She worked as head of the Department of English with experience of teaching English across primary, middle and secondary school. She worked as founder and co-organizer of Bookworms of Bangalore. Currently, she is working on a large project for the translation of educational material for the Swell Khan app for the visually impaired developed by the Nivant And Mukta Vikasalaya NGO. She is blogger and book reviewer and receive books for review from publishers like Harper Jeman. She worked as assistant editor for Chhatra Prabodhan Youth magazine. She is German English translator and translated legal documents, bank statements, financial papers, and research articles. She knows languages like English, Marathi.
Rita ma'am and Vedkar sir for the very warm welcome and introduction. So let me just check with you all once. Can I get a thumbs up or some indication to show that I am audible? Am I audible to everyone?
Audible, ma'am.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. All right, so if it's okay with everyone, I would just like to share my screen as I get started. Okay. Again, I hope that my screen is all right. So the topic that I have for today's talk is redefining participation in the modern classroom. I think we can all agree, just the very fact that we are here in a webinar and that you have been conducting so many of these webinars over the last year, that the way we communicate with each other in the last few years, thanks to the pandemic, has drastically changed. Now, when we say communicate with each other, I'm not even speaking just about the educational sphere, but also the professional sphere and even the personal sphere. So we have now, been conducting events online, meeting our own family sometimes online, WhatsApping each other and messaging each other. In some ways, it has really opened up channels for communication, but at the same time, it is also a little hard to change, right? But we have done it. We have successfully changed the way we speak to each other, we communicate with each other. Now, I have been blessed, privileged to have a teaching experience in this very turbulent kind of time. And I just wanted to share a few lessons that I have learned from online teaching. Yes, teaching for the last 2 years online has been different and we are getting used to it. So these lessons can be applied to online communication if it continues, which it probably is going to continue, online learning. But at the same time, they can also be applied to our actual classrooms, our physical classrooms as well. So lessons learned from on the online world, which can be applied to our physical classrooms when it comes to participation. So before we get started, I want to share a couple of pictures with you. Okay, so I want you to look at these two pictures and try and answer the question, who seems more engaged and interested? Is it picture A or picture B? You can tell me your answers or you can share them in the chat. The main thing is to think to yourself, who looks more engaging, A or B? Okay. As you think about it, also try to ask yourself why. Why do I? So I see someone has answered B. Try to ask yourself, which observable behavior do I see in these pictures that makes me say A is more participative or B is more participative? Who seems more engaged and interested? This I'll give you a minute to think. I want you to ask yourself not just who, but also why. Okay. Is it something to do with the way they're seated? Is it something to do with where they're looking and actions, right? So there may be many different reasons that each of you has for why you think one person, either A or B, is participating more or less. Okay. So now let me give you my perspective. Let me let you in on secret. Participation is invisible, right? So I'll say it again. Participation is invisible. When we say we want students to participate in the classroom, it's the participation of the mind that we're talking about. We're talking about engaging the mind of the student, not a physical reaction necessarily that we want from the student. So when we display content to the student or you're talking to student, what you really want them to do is respond to the content that you're sharing, think about it, go from being a passive receiver of your content to actively involved in what you are teaching them. The way they actively involve themselves can sometimes be visible, of course, but it is not always visible. What is active is the mind, right? So we have to be able to then talk about our topic today of redefining participation and how to get people to participate, how to get students to participate. We need to rethink what we define as participation at all, what we think is participation at all. Okay, but before we get into the nitty gritties, the details of what to look for, how to encourage it, what channels to create, I want to take a few steps back and ask this. Should we value participation? Or rather, why should we value participation? Okay, so why do we value engagement of the mind? If we define participation as engaging different minds, what is the value in that? If anyone has any answers, I would be happy to hear them. Or you can, again, as I said, share them in the chat. Alright, so what I feel is, as communicators, teachers, professionals, or even when we're talking to our friends, we are not just looking for a sounding board to throw our ideas at. If you want to talk to yourself, if you just want to listen to the sound of yourself talking, you can talk alone, you can talk in front of the mirror, you can write in a diary. What we're really doing in a classroom is trying to talk to other humans. We want them to absorb what is happening, we want them to reflect, we want them to interact with the content that we share, and we also want an interaction back. So we're also trying to gain something from it ourselves, right? So I have jotted down points that I think are reasons why participation is valuable for me personally. You might have other reasons why participation is valuable, and they're all valid. I think it facilitates engagement with the content. So you're not just giving information out, but actively trying to do something with it, apply it to your real life, reflect on it, think about it, respond to it. It also promotes attention. Yeah, so if you're actively trying to get people to respond to what you have given them, they are more likely to be more attentive. It is also a tool to examine the success of learning. What I mean by that is, whatever I've been communicating for the 2 hours, how much of it has had an effect on my students. You understand how much the student has learned. Not only do you understand it, but the students themselves understand how much they have learned, only if they actively engage with what they are learning. And finally, it becomes a two-way process. So instead of teaching just becoming an activity where one person is delivering and the other person is receiving, it turns into a teaching and learning process for both the participants involved. Right? So these are the reasons why I would say participation is not the end goal of a classroom. The goal is to facilitate learning, is to create self-awareness, is to create engagement. Talking is one way to do it, but it's not the only way to do it. There are many different ways that this participation monster can be handled, and not all of them involve speaking. Okay, so again, in a classroom, when you ask a student, have you understood something? Do you want to recap? Are you prepared for the test? What do you want to learn today? Do you want to go with literature or grammar? So I'm using examples from English because that's the subject that I teach. It not only, again, gets you a response from the students, but it also makes the student aware of their own needs. It gives them a sense of agency in the classroom, right? They now are an active participant, not just because they are speaking in the classroom, but they now have to take responsibility of how much they've learned, self-assess, and then learn from that. So learn where they are from that. Okay, so these goals of why you want students to talk need to be clear, not just because speaking is important, but because we need to achieve different goals through that interaction. Okay, so now I will give you a candid personal example. Yeah, as you can see on the slide, it says move beyond questions and answers. So a typical classroom is always, or more or less, just that. It's a teacher giving a lecture and then asking a set of questions and then students responding, and then you can say, congratulations, class participation is done. but actually there is more than one way that a student can participate. So I'll give you an example. I'm a very quiet person. Some might say that I'm in the wrong profession. You really can't be a teacher if you're a very quiet person, but at least as a student, I was quite the quiet student. I don't speak unless I absolutely have to share something that is different. So if in the same class there is another classmate of mine who has the same point to share as me, I will let them speak it. That kind of thing, usually in a classroom, makes me a quieter person. But I'm a talkative writer. Now that might sound funny, to be a talkative writer. How can you be a talkative writer? Because talking is different from writing. But it's true. So whenever there's a written assignment in class, even in school, even now when I, attend professional courses, if there's a written assignment, I get very active. I write a lot. I write a lot more than people want me to write. So it's very hard to stop me. Now, online learning has been a blessing for me. I've seen a little shift in the way I interact as a student in a classroom. So I've been attending a few diplomas and courses like that. And what I have noticed is that now, thanks to Zoom calls and Google Meet calls, because chat is an option, because I can answer questions in the actual. What I was not doing was speaking, right? So my participation was always there. What has changed is that it has become visible because of the chat option. So I was given the channel to become visible. That's really what we need to do for our students. We need to create channels for our students' invisible participation to become visible. Yeah, so we go back to our there were two men possibly equally engaged in whatever they were doing, but one of them was more visible to some of you. Now, I saw a few answers in the chat, or one answer in the chat which said that B was more engaged. I would have said A was more engaged, just by how I judge engagement or how my first impressions work, right? What we need to do is find a way to recognize both their participations. And so, how do you do that? Now, in any classroom or even a meeting, I would say there are different ways of being positively participating or positively engaged in the classroom. It is not simply about questions and answers, yes. It is about different kinds of behaviors that show that you are engaged with the content at hand. So I've taken two on each slide. So you have listen and respond, right? Now response is something that I think we are very familiar with. We do expect our students to respond verbally a lot in the class. The first thing is questions, answer questions that are asked by the teacher. But I would say listening is a little more important than speaking. If you look at the points that I have made, making eye but also to what the peers are saying. It's a class of 30, 35, 60, 120 people, not a one-on-one interaction. So there are a lot more voices that need to be heard. Taking time to think before you respond is another way that you can engage with the content. So usually, especially if there is anyone who has ever taught a younger classroom, you would know that if you ask a question, at least three hands in the class shoot up right away and they want to answer right away. There are also people who want to take a pause, formulate an answer in their mind, make sure that their answer is right, and then maybe muster the courage to answer. Both are skills of participation, both are right ways of participation, and we need to encourage both. We teach subjects in the classroom, right? We teach maybe math or English or science in the classroom, but we also expect behaviors. So what we need to do is teach what we expect. So apart from teaching maths and English and science, we should also teach how to participate, how to be confident, how to listen, and how to respond. So you're no longer expecting participation, teaching content but expecting participation, but you're also teaching participation at the same time. So model these behaviors, discuss these behaviors. When you say you don't talk enough in class, tell them what you expect them to do, what talking means entirely, right? When you say, listen to me, tell them how to do that. If you're telling them to plan their answers, ask them to make the notes before they answer a question. So this is something that I had done for one of my grade 9 speaking activities, where I knew that there would be students left at the end of the classroom who haven't said anything till the end. So instead, the idea was that I am going to read out each question and take a 30-second pause. And I want everyone to plan out their answers and raise your hand only when you're confident. And only if you're confident and if you've raised your hand, after everyone has had a chance to think, will I decide who is going to answer. And you wouldn't believe the kind of response that I got from the students who I know are not confident enough, right? Because I know my students the best. So I could actually wait for 30 seconds and wait for the shy student to finally have the courage to put their hand up and ask them and give them the first opportunity to speak instead of, as usual, getting the last opportunity to speak, right? So listening skill is a skill, and we also want the overactive and the very enthusiastic students to also learn how to dial that back and how to pause and how to let others speak. So that is a skill that you're developing in them. That is an engagement skill that you're developing in them. So listen and respond. But even with listen and respond, I think we are still in the typical zone of what counts under positive participation. Let's look at 2 other things that I would say show that a child is participating or a student is participating in your class, or even a team member is participating in your meeting. Clarifying, right? So not only giving the right answers or trying their luck and giving the wrong answers, but also asking doubts. I think asking doubts shows that there is engagement with the content, because it's just proof that, if something is not clear and they want to find out, that shows that they are engaged, shows that they want from peers. Now, this is something I always tell teachers. So I've been doing a bit of teacher training, and I was, as ma'am mentioned, the head of the department, so managing the team there. And this is something I always find interesting discussing with teachers, which is that if you find 2 students talking to each other in the classroom, what do you do? Yeah, so it is something that I feel should be actively encouraged, because you are not the only person in their social circle right then. There are other people who are in their social circle, and there might be a student in your class who does feel more comfortable clarifying things with their classmates than with you. So then do you just allow it? Yes, I agree. 9 out of 10 cases, they may be talking about the last movie that they saw. They're probably not asking each other doubts, but there is a 10th student that it is. Let that conversation go on. Sometimes that student and their partner will be able to solve a problem that they had better than you. Yeah, so interaction, clarification opportunities, not just with you, but with each other as well. If you see that behavior in your classroom, that is also positive classroom participation. Right now, another thing is adding on. Okay, so are they prepared for the next class? Do they recap things at home? Do they share content that may not be discussed in the class? So self-study. I see a lot of students. So I, as a school teacher especially, but I think even in professional settings, you would see this. I see a lot of students who attend tuitions, right? It's an unavoidable circumstance in most schools. And then they have these books at home that they've already gone ahead and solved. And they have these teachers who give them difficult questions, and they want to come back to class and share them with their classmates, or they want to share them with you. Now, this is good behavior. It may be happening in a tuition. That's not going to mean that, this tuition work stays out of my class, or this book is not prescribed for our school, so you don't bring it in. No. This kind of behavior, where they're actively bringing in content into the classroom, should be encouraged. We as teachers are part of the classroom. Okay, so we can also be actively involved in creating content with the students. Okay, so if you have a topic that you're discussing and you know some child is good at it or some student is good at it or they have more experience, then you get them to be part of the classroom discussion by bringing extra information, by bringing expertise that you as a subject teacher also might lack, right? So add on and clarification are two other parts of classroom participation that I think are sometimes missed out but are equally important. Now, even if we look at listen and respond and clarify and add on, am I saying that there is a list of a framework of these are the 5 things you need to do, and that shows, that proves that your class is participating? So judge them on these 5 criteria? Probably not. You know your class better than a rubric or a framework can predict for you. But I do think that there are things that you can ask yourself instead of questions that you can ask students, right? So ask yourself these 8 questions. Now, again, as I am more experienced in teaching, I will be using examples for teaching as I talk about this, but I think you can also apply this to just professional meetings or other conversations that you have. Okay. So the first thing is, what kind of questions do you ask? When you speak to people, do you ask open-ended questions? Do you ask questions like yes or no? Do you give them any kind of decision-making? Do you ask them to think about something with a specific answer in mind, and only if you get that answer is it correct or is it wrong? Right, so what kind of questions do you ask in class? Do you have a specific answer in mind when you ask? Do you ask students if they want to choose the next activity? Yeah, just how flexible are you in the kind of responses you want from students? The second thing is, how much teacher talk is there? Now, right now, I am the only person talking, and it is already quite uncomfortable for me as the teacher. But yes, there shouldn't be one person monopolizing the conversation in a classroom, which is an exchange. So if you, wherever you're able to do it, give a platform for interaction, exchange, rather than just one person speaking. Okay. The third thing is, how many breaks do you give? So I have a question. What do you think is an average person's attention span? Anyone? How long do you think we can do one task without wanting to shift to another, without being distracted? So let me tell you, it's for an adult, so someone above the age of 18, not a school child. For an adult, it is 15 to 20 minutes. That's the most that you can be engaged in one task without wanting to switch gears, without wanting to do something else, right? 15 to 20 minutes for an adult, much less, maybe 10 to 15 minutes for a child. We can all agree that most meetings and classes last longer than we want them to. Longer than we're able to attend to one thing, right? Not a judgment of a person, but this is just how our brains are equipped. Our brains are not equipped to do more than one thing for that long. It's not physically possible. So as teachers, we need to give them a shift in gear, or we need to lower our expectations. Breaks don't have to be coffee breaks. You can have games, you can have energizers that you do in between, you can have polls, you can decide what works best for your class and engage them in something else so that their participation in the rest of the meeting, the rest of the class, is as high as it can be. You're making it easier for them to participate by giving them a break. Yes, time is important, but then using time usefully is also important. So again, funny example, I was a teacher for grade 4 a long time ago, and primary kids are bursting with enthusiasm, bursting with energy, right? So what I had told my class was, between 2 activities, so if I've given you a writing task and then after that we are going to do some grammar worksheets, between that, after you finish it, you are allowed to stand behind your chairs and jump up and down. Now I can imagine for my principal or my headmistress. It must have been a slightly scary sight to pass my English classroom. So what was supposed to be an English classroom and just see kids jumping up and down. But it worked very well. I would not have kids getting bored during the literature or bored during the grammar because they got 5 minutes of jumping time, jumping up and down like frogs. But they got to do that so that they were able to participate in the rest of things, the rest of the things very well. So I ensured their participation by giving them something that I knew would help them relax. I knew that because I knew them. It may not work with a 20-year-old, but it worked with them. So you just have to find something that works with your students and make them do that or allow them to do that. In fact, you can ask them what they want to do. I'm sure they will come up with a lot of answers of how they can get their energy back. Give them that agency, let them decide that. Tell them it can only last for 5 minutes, but I'm sure that the participation in the rest of the class will be, drastically changed if you just give them freedom to do what they want for some of the time. And so breaks, a very important thing. Which modes of participation can they use? That's the next thing. Yes, so I think we have discussed this earlier as well. Do they only speak? Can they chat? Can they come and meet you after class, before class? Is it only is it only written in long form? Can they send you a message? So some of these are institutional, the institution doesn't allow it, so you don't do it. But whatever fits the most that you can do, the number of channels you open up for them to participate, the more likely they are to show that participation. The second thing is the fifth thing is how much time do they get to answer, right? So again, as I shared this earlier, take a pause, let them think and let them answer. In fact, one of the techniques that works really well is if you ask them a question at the beginning of the class, you're teaching something to them during the class, ask them for the answers at the end. So it's something like, what do you think about this topic that we're going to learn? A very vague thing, but they have it at the back of their mind that they have to answer this question at the end of the class. So they now learn the content in a different way, and at the end of the class, you discuss the answers that they have. Or you can leave them with a question at the end of today's class and then discuss it the next day. Not always, but it does work sometimes, right? We are not trying to think of a method that will work for all 60 students. We are trying to think of 20 methods so that most of the 60 students, or all of them, hopefully, will be able to participate. I think generalizations like someone doesn't participate and someone does participate need to be reconsidered. How can I make everyone participate? That's the task that you have to keep in mind for yourself, right? So that's why it says self-exam. Ask yourself what you can do to get that participation in. Now, point number 6 is, do they only respond to you or to their peers' questions? Are you the only one asking questions in the class? Are there other questions being asked? Very often, you have someone asking a question, and the best thing that you can do at that moment for the asker and for the rest of the class is to ask the rest of the class, what do you think? Do you have an answer to his question? And you will see that they do have answers. They can have entire exchanges where you are almost irrelevant to the story, right? You are just there to facilitate discussion between them. And sometimes that gets the most engagement from most of the class because they want to interact with their peers. You're giving them a chance to do something that they like to do. Yes, so do they only respond to you or to their peers' questions? That's a very important point. And the 7th thing, a little follow-up to that, is how many questions do they ask you? Yeah, so is the kind of questions that they ask you in a class, how often are they doubts? And how often are they trying to find out what you think about something? Do you agree with them on something? What else do you know about a topic? Right? So something that I like to tell everyone is that 99% of the activities that I give my students, I participate in them as well. First of all, it's a very humbling experience because you realize how sky high your expectations are when you are the receiver of the assignment rather than the giver of the assignment. But even honestly, if you put yourself in the middle of a discussion and let them ask you or involve you into the conversation, they will feel more open to answer, right? So you have someone who, so this is something I do for jam sessions. So what we call jam in English class, or just a minute, where you give them a minute to talk about a topic with no preparation, and maybe like a minute of preparation, and they have to go on for a minute, and they're terrified of doing it because they think that they'll say something wrong or they won't have anything to say. And a little skill, but an interesting thing that you can do in class is tell them, okay, you give me a topic and I will try it too. And the result is the best thing that can happen, because you know you will also probably not have everything right and grammatically correct, and you may not remember the correct word, or you may not remember the English word and you'll remember the Marathi or the Hindi word. But so what? You're asking them to do it, right? The moment you do it, the moment they see you participate in the class, they will be more confident, more interested in then trying it out themselves. So something to try out is getting them to ask you pointed questions. As you go into teaching older students, there's always that set of students in the class who just doesn't believe anything you have to say. So there's always a student who says, but how do you know this? No, but that's not what I read. No, but that's not what I knew. Understand that not as being overconfident, but as being engaged. Right? If they feel that they know more, or they know better, or they're asking you to prove something, it is not a comment on you. It is a comment on the fact that they care enough about that topic, or they're thinking enough about that topic, that they have genuine doubts about what is being discussed or what is being said. So I get this a lot. English teacher, and I was teaching in a place where I had people from all over the country, students from all over the country, with different accents and different pronunciations, and me with my Marathi accent. So I had students always telling me, no, that's not how the word is pronounced. That's not a judgment. That's not a question that is questioning my ability. What I have to do is tell them, no, see, this is why I'm saying that this is pronounced this way. Next time you have a pronunciation doubt, you can go to the dictionary and check it in this manner. And they know you've answered the question for them, right? So it's okay for them to ask you questions. In fact, it's encouraged. And finally, the last thing that I would again ask you to think to yourself is, what kind of participation do you generally reward? Okay, so if you find yourself saying, well done, great answer, just ask yourself, am I saying that to a particular kind of answer? Am I saying that because the person was confident? Am I saying that because the person was the first one to answer? Am I saying, good job, I'm glad you answered, to someone who gave a completely wrong answer? Rewarding only correct answers? Are you rewarding only a certain kind of participation? Something again to ask yourself, and try and change, try and expand the horizons that you set for the students, so that the next time a shy student answers and you tell them, I'm glad you answered, but this is what you should have said, or something like that, at least they know that that participation, however small it may be, is being recognized, motivating them to then participate a little more the next time. Here again, I have a very quick example. So speaking assessments, right? Speaking assessments in online learning was a problem that no language teacher was prepared for. It's very hard to get students to speak up, let alone turn on their videos in an online classroom. I was teaching grade 9 and 10, so they are especially not interested in turning their videos on. I remember when we were just in that March 2020 time, when we were just shifting to Zoom calls, it was very frustrating for me personally to just look at 17 black boxes and somehow communicate, right? We want responses. As teachers, we literally live on just that twinkle that you see in the students' eye, where they don't even have to say anything. You can just tell from their expression that they have understood. We learn what not to teach, what to do, just based on that expression. And then to suddenly become, confronted by black squares was very unsettling for me. I used to keep telling them, turn your screens on, I'm talking to boxes, I need to see your faces. And then finally, one of my students was, on some committee with me, and I was just talking to her on Instagram of all the places. And she told me, I told her, you know what, it's very hard for me to teach your class now. I don't see all of you. I'm not used to teaching like that. And she says, but ma'am, if we keep our videos on, our classmates will take screenshots. And I thought, yeah, that's probably true. I mean, even if in my situation, it's still uncomfortable to keep my video on. Imagine when you were 16, if it was possible to, have your classmates see you and stuck in these weird expressions if your internet freezes. Yeah, I would be terrified to do that in class. So I realized that it had nothing to do with me. It had nothing to do with English or school or me. It was just something to do with a very valid personal reason that they had. And my job now was to make participation easier for them. So instead of taking a speaking assessment live, I asked them to send me audios. Okay, so record your whatever you want to say. I gave them an open-ended topic and I asked them to record it and send it to me. But I told them, you know what, I'm giving you a chance to do it at home. So confidence and fluency are two things that I'm not going to judge, because you will be more confident talking to yourself and you will be more fluent because many of you will be reading it. Right? So I'm not going to judge you on these two things, but pronunciation and clarity and all of those aspects still remain. So I'll judge you on them. And the most beautiful thing from that was that there were two very, very shy students in my class who sent me audios. And my topic was talk about something that is important to you. So as vague as that. Yes, they could interpret it the way they want, and it can't be something that they Googled and found. It has to be something personal. And I got an audio and I still have it. So this was a couple of years back. I sent it to my principal. I was just so impressed by it. I got a video from a very, very quiet, very shy shy student who has spoken about how difficult it is for him to speak. So he has made an entire audio about, if this was a normal class, I wouldn't have said anything. I am scared that my English is not clear. I am scared that my classmates will make fun of me. Okay, for a grade 10 child, it was quite impressive for me that he has managed to share all of this in audio just because the mode of participation changed, right? So I was then able to really encourage him, reward him with a good grade that he would have otherwise missed out on because he is shy, right? So if you change the way you look for participation, or if you change the way you seek participation, if you open up more channels, it is definitely going to be useful. It is definitely going to show results in the way that students speak. So coming to the very end, with a few years of online teaching and what is going to be a few more years, or at least one more year, luckily, there are a lot of online interactive tools that you can use in your classroom to open up, like I said, different ways of getting students to participate. Online learning is hard, is something that we've been learning about for a long time now. For months and months, we've been discussing about how difficult online learning is. But we have to understand that when we say online learning is hard, we are talking about the emergency online learning that all of us had to do. Right? So we're talking about suddenly one day waking up and starting online classes. But distance learning or online education has been taking place successfully for a much longer time than post-pandemic, right? So the reason that so many interactive online tools are available is because distance learning is a thing that actually works. We just have to learn to make it work for us now. Okay, so we as teachers may not have the training for online teaching that maybe distance educators have. But we have the privilege of using tools that distance educators have successfully used for years. Because the pandemic is worldwide and it's not just something affecting one country or one place, many of these online tools are actually made available for free for educators. So yes, we can definitely make use of the fact. Okay, so I have put up some examples of tools that I use. I'm sure you're familiar with many of them. Many of them might be new for you. I've divided them into what you can use them for. So one-on-one conversations, if you want to have a conversation outside of class, the normal routes of email, chat, even chat messages in, I think with Zoom, you have the functionality that they can write a message only to the teacher and not to the entire group. Not sure if Google Meet has that. Telegram, WhatsApp, audio messages, if they're not if they're not speaking to you in the class, they can send you a message later. If you want them to work in groups, you can have breakout rooms. You can have them create WhatsApp groups where you are a moderator. They can work on. So there's this place called Canva. So my presentation right now is on Canva. But what they can actually do here is it's like a chart. So if you have a chart paper activity in class, or they're working on an actual paper, this can be something like that, where you add different people to the same chart, the same sheet. They have different texts and different fonts and different pictures available online, and they can work together to create something over there. It is also possible to do that in Google Slides, I think, where again you can add multiple people and they make presentations there. If you want dialogue grading outside of class, there's Moodle or Flipgrid. I do want to take a minute to talk about the talk and comment feature in Chrome. So this is something I love. It's like a plugin or a widget, so you can download it. And if you use the Chrome browser, so that's I think what most of us use. If you use the Google Chrome browser, you can add it to that. And if you open any website, so if you're sharing any explanation with students saying, this is a resource that you need to refer to, what you can do with this talk and comment option is you can actually talk and add your explanation or comment to the site. And then you can share the link with the students. So not only do they get a website as to this is an important website, but they get a link which also has your spoken explanation in it. That's as close as I think you can get to sharing information physically, right? Then you can take polls and surveys. I've shared some places where you can create surveys. You can take quizzes. The reason these apps, so quizzes.com or Kahoot, the reason that these apps are more useful is because they are AI, right? So there is some interaction with the computer. They give messages like well done and good job, and who doesn't like to listen, have that kind of feedback. It doesn't just work on kids, it works on me. Yeah, so I'm sure it'll work on any age of students. Then you have idea boards, so things like Padlet or places like Nearpod, yeah, where different members can share ideas together. And the advantage here is that it can be anonymous if the student wants it to be anonymous, but at the same time, as a teacher, you can control which things get published and which don't, so that irrelevant or inappropriate comments don't come in, but at the same time, everyone gets to decide whether they want to reveal their name or not. This works beautifully in classrooms. Yeah, so the other thing, I don't think I spoke about quizzes. Yeah, but I think the beautiful thing about quizzes, to take a quiz, is that for most of the subjects in the world, they have a ready-made database of questions. So I just need to go into quizzes.com, create a quiz. I have, let's say, put my topic of tenses, hundreds of questions on tenses, and I can select which ones go into my quiz and directly create it for my class. It can be done live or it can be done. The thing to keep in mind when it comes to participation is flexibility. We need to be flexible with our expectations, with our methods, with our modes, and it'll work. It'll work if we are able to give that much of flexibility. Okay. You may have to, something will work on one class and may not work on the other. You just have to be open-minded about it. Okay. So I would love to know if you have any questions. I'll stop here.
Thank you, ma'am, for your informative lecture on the topic.
Thank you so much.
Now, I request participants, if they have any question or doubt, please ask.
All right. So a small request, if it is possible, I would love it if you share your feedback with me. I will share one of the things that I had shared in one of my sites, which is Padlet. It's a nice way for you to try it out as well. I've shared the link in the chat. All you need to do is go to the link. There's a little plus sign in the corner where it says add post, and if you have any feedback, please share it there, and I would love to learn from you. so much.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Ma'am, good evening. Very nice lecture you are going now. We enjoyed the
Is
session.
there any question?
Hello.
Yeah.
Sir, I am audible.
Yes, you are.
Yes, madam. Very nicely explain each and everything on today's topic.
Thank you, sir.
Madam, I am also a teacher teaching English.
Oh,
Most of the time I am observing in the class that students they are not sitting attentively nowadays because I'm working since 17 18 years. Lastly, if I compare the students, they were sitting attentively, engaging the classes regularly. They have much confidence to the class and they are very attentive for learning, etc. But nowadays, in recently some years, the students are they are not taking seriously. Even though we are giving them the same, handling the same skills to the students, but this is a gap. Something is there. Now I'm finding among the students.
yeah. So I think a lot of this is also just the effect of the pandemic, right? Socialization in general has reduced. So that might also be one reason why their kind of participation has changed. I think what you can do is, a couple of things. You can also talk to them, ask them why it is becoming hard for them to sit. Yeah, they will tell you the best. And I think you can switch up and try different kind of activities. So you said that you're doing the same things, you've been doing the same things, or you're teaching the same things, but I think that is the key, right? I think we need to change what we're teaching as well. That's a very vague thing to say. It's not very specific enough, I know that. But the skills that you want them from them in an online world may not be the same that you wanted in the physical world. So you might just have to slightly also change your expectations.
This is not only happening in online teaching, but even the classroom also physically. The students they are not taking seriously. So this is my questions. Please.
Okay. I think one thing that definitely works. So I'm not sure of the age group of your students. It will also change with the age group. But one thing that definitely works is taking games. So gamify everything. Turn everything into a game. Right from questions and I'm sorry. Yeah. And right from questions and quizzes and everything that you can do in class, if you can turn it into be interesting. I think that's one thing that
Yes,
I can say.
madam.
Gamifying is something you can do.
Yes, madam. Thank you very much. This part is there in the syllabus because if we are starting teaching, before we ask the questions, we ask the students some questions. But even though they are not interact with the teachers, they are not showing their interest among the teachings, etc. Now, this
They're
kind
not
of
showing-
problems are facing nowadays, not to my class, but everywhere. Yes,
Yeah,
ma'am.
that's true. I think there is a difference in, that's what I'm saying. So socialization overall is reduced. They are used to staying more at home. If they come to class, they're meeting their friends after a long time. Yes, they're not getting to meet as many people. At least in most places, it's quite locked up, right? So I think there will be that bit of change. Them also, they also have to get used to coming back to school and paying attention for 8 hours. Not easy, right? I can't pay attention for 8 hours. I think it will be hard for everyone. So we'll just have to change our methods a little bit, try different things and see what works. Maybe they can lead the conversation rather than having you lead it.
One thing is there, madam. I'm adding here that they don't know the competitions, basically in the education fields. If they know the competitions which is going there, so they will be serious. But they don't know how the future will be there and how they should develop themselves, how to develop their skills, etc. And that's why it is a drawback, I think. The students, they are not learning these things in their lives.
Yeah, I think they learn it as they experience it. So that will definitely go up.
Yes, madam. Okay.
Thank you so
Excellent.
much.
Thank you very much, madam. Very nice explained.
Thank you so much.
We enjoyed the session. You guided more to us. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
तुळशी असं कशाला ठेवलं? ते नाही ते सकाळी
So we
सकाळी.
can end this here, right? Thank you.
नाही रे पैसे आत्ता शर्टात पडले ते कपडे तिकडे टाकायचे म्हणलीस ना
Is there any
त्याच्यामुळे ते
question?
होतंच. हम्म.
Now, after this discussion session, in which ma'am has very nicely explained,
दार बंद करून घे, ते लय आवाज
now after
येतो.
this session, I would like to invite Honorable Chairperson Dr. M. Bedkar sir to deliver concluding speech. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Professor Karad sir. Thank you, Anita Dhole madam, and our organizing committee members, including the active participant Prashant Ughade sir, and all organizing committee members of our college. I was very much in question about the this topic because it was the first time that emphasis is given on the participation. We actually teach students, give some assignments, and we basically don't care about how they are reacting with us. But it was very important topic that students should be involved. Those who are slow learners or fast learners, you have given so much examples and ideas how to give activeness to the students, those who are from backbencher or those who are not responding. Really it was very nice because every teacher should follow this technique for well-being and for the progressive of the students. The first two pictures you have shown very interactively and other examples also, and your classroom examples also. So these are so much useful to all teachers to get an active class with all participants, all type of participants, and also you give different techniques and modes how to the student should be involved in our teaching. So in this is very important that two students are physically in the class but they are not completely involved in the teaching, learning, responding. So this fact is very important, and your example of that jumping is also was important because every time if they get fresh and energetic, they will try to involve in the interaction and question answers. So new aspect and useful aspect, real thing is that someone says that when we do some exertion, we have rest, then we try to do a hobby, any hobby we have for 1 minute or 2 minutes, like meditation or any singing, listening, all these things. So it gives a more energetic span to us to do. So with your techniques, students are of you are very lucky that they got the teacher like you. Thank you, madam. Very nicely given this topic to us, to the all
Thank you so
teachers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your concluding words and for your comments on the topic. And this national webinar series is becoming successful and interesting. Every day there are new topics, and it is because of the efforts of the principal and chairperson of this webinar, Honorable Dr. M. Bedkar sir. I thank him on behalf of the organizing committee of the webinar series. I also thank today's honorable keynote speaker and chief guest, Priya Dabak ma'am, for sparing time to deliver such a nice lecture on how to increase participation of students in the classroom and how to make it very beneficial for the students. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much. I also thank all honorable organizing committee members and Dhole ma'am, who has given very good introduction of the keynote speaker. I also thank all the participants who are joining from the different corners of this country and also maybe from abroad. So thank you, participants. And at the end, I would like to request all the participants to fill feedback link so that they can receive their certificates. And with the permission of honorable chairperson of this national webinar, I declare here that today's webinar is over. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thank
Priya
you,
ma'am. In future also you can join here, and if you have time, you may encourage our other resource persons try to join the webinar, and you also some more resource person from your field or from your contacts,
of course.
so that we can continue this series, because the backbone of our series is participant and the resource person,
Yes.
and we want to complete it
Yes.
1000 webinars. We have reached up to near about 50, so 5000 are remaining for our golden jubilee year of this college. Thank you, madam. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you so much. I will definitely tell
Yes.
more people to come join this.
Yes,
Thank you.
madam.
Thanks a lot, madam. We appreciate it today. Thank you very much.
हेलो प्रशांत सर।
विद्यासागर सर, क्या बात कर रहे हैं आप? बोलिए
गुड
सर।
इवनिंग सर। सर पीपीटी बहुत ही अच्छा सेशन था। पीपीटी शेयर हो सकता है ग्रुप में सर?
जी जी, उनको मैं पर्सनली मैसेज करूंगा, पीपीटी शेयर करो बोल के। अभी तो ऑफलाइन हो गए मैडम, तो अपने ग्रुप पे मैं उस मुझे भी बहुत अच्छा लगा वो पीपीटी का जो कुछ मैटर है, बहुत अच्छे हैं। मैं उनको रिक्वेस्ट करूंगा, जैसे ही मुझे मिला वैसे मैं आपको व्हाट्सएप ग्रुप पे अपने शेयर करूंगा। ठीक है सर, करूंगा। हाँ।